Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. Today we're in our A-10A and we're looking at the cockpit and the cockpit controls. Now the first thing to point out is that the A-10A is a low fidelity aircraft, otherwise known as a Flaming Cliffs 3 aircraft. In DCS you get low fidelity and high fidelity aircraft. So the high fidelity are the ones that, you know, they're high fidelity because they're the more expensive ones to buy, but they're the ones that every single switch in the cockpit is modelled, and you can go and take your mouse cursor and click on them and twist the knobs and do everything like that, and it's all modelled as per the real aircraft. A low fidelity model like this is not like that. In a low fidelity model like this, the buttons are not clickable with the mouse anywhere that I'm aware. That said, a lot of the controls are still interactable either through keyboard binds or just that they are passive instruments like gauges, which just tell you information. So there's still a lot to be learned. So one thing I can say is that we can, for this video, what we're going to do is just look at the instruments and buttons and stuff that we can actually play with and give us information that we need to know to fly the plane. So this whole bank around here that I'm circling with the mouse now on the left is basically of no use to us. The only thing we can say here is that the throttle stick moves forward and backwards when we move our throttle stick. On the right here, as far as I'm aware, nothing is actually usable around here. We've got no TACAN in this, I don't think, in this aircraft. We've got no use to actually set the radio frequency, so I don't think any of this. Apart from this, we've got a warning panel here. Probably not all these warning lamps and emergency lamps will be modelled in this low fidelity model, but at least some of them will be. We're not going to go through every single one because we're just not going into that kind of detail. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at is basically everything circled in here that is interactable in one way or another. So we'll start at the bottom left and kind of work our way around in a big arc down to the bottom right. So let's see what we've got. Flap indicators here. If I press the F key, I can go between 0 degrees, 10 degrees and 20 degrees of flaps, depending if I'm taking off, landing, level flight and whatnot, and that is a passive gauge that works and is useful. Here we've got gear warning lights, gear down lights. So if these three show green, then the gear is down and you can go and land basically. This is the gear knob, so if it's in an up position like this, then the gear are up. If it's in a down position, then the gear are configured down, and your gear go up and down with the G key as per standard. Okay, we're going to overlook these, what I'm framing here, because nothing in here is configurable as far as I'm aware. Next is a clock, and it does work, and well, that's it, it's a clock. These guys here are not configurable as far as I'm aware. This here that I'm framing with my mouse here is the weapons control panel, the ordnance panel, and including this, here. This does need some looking at, but we're going to just breeze over it for the time being, and we'll come back to it in a bit. Next, we've got an angle of attack meter here. This tells us our angle of attack or our alpha, and it's a passive gauge basically. For some reason it's reading 20 degrees. That can't be right. Let me just go and have a look at that. Very, very strange. It's reading 20 degrees and we're clearly not running at 20 degrees at the moment. We're running at 8.6 degrees, so I'm not sure. I've never noticed that being out before, so if anyone knows why that is out at the moment, or if I'm reading it wrong in some way, please let me know. But that is supposed to be our angle of attack meter. Next we have a backup ADI, otherwise known as artificial horizon. It does work and it's small and it's a backup. The caging knob here does not work and we cannot adjust it. Next we have our RWR, radar warning receiver. This is used to locate or identify various radar sources around our aircraft and show them to us. Now I won't go into it any further. I have a full video on the A-10A RWR in the A-10A playlist. Attached to that is the control panel for the RWR. Nothing here is clickable, nothing here is selectable. One thing to note is that lights do come on the various buttons, sometimes, on some of the buttons, under relevant situations. Now I don't have any examples of that. Yes I do. If someone launches a missile at us, we'll get a light here on the launch. If someone's searching us with a search radar, we'll get a light on the search, I believe. So there is some functionality there. Next, let's go up, and we've got the HUD here. So this HUD, our heads-up display, gives us lots of information. Now, we're not going to go through it in detail because, again, I've got a full video on the A-10A HUD in the A-10A playlist. All I'd like to say at the moment is I can press 1 to get into navigation mode. I can press 6 to get into air-to-air mode. 7 to get into air-to-ground mode. That's all I want to cover on that at the moment. We have a HUD control panel here. Pretty sure none of this is interactable and none of it essentially works or changes. Here we have an accelerometer. It tells us the G's that we're pulling up to positive 10 and -4 or -5. Under the accelerometer here we have our angle of attack indexer. This is used, I believe, only on landings. It's just 3 lights. If this middle light is showing, you are on the correct angle of attack for landing. If this one is highlighted, then you are at a too high angle of attack for landing, and this one here, you are on a too low angle of attack for landing. Now, this chap over here, my apologies, my memory is not good, and I don't get to fly this very often, I think, is the information regarding air-to-air refueling, which you can do in this plane. You'll have different states of air-to-air refueling, like taking fuel, ready to take fuel, and whatnot. I forget the exact icons, but I believe that's the meter there. I can't see it anywhere else. I think that's it. And we have a magnetic compass here, which is passive and works. Okay, next, our primary ADI or artificial horizon. This tells us whether we are wings. Well, what I'll just show you. If we are, no, I can't because I've got my autopilot on, so turn autopilot off. If we are wings rolled, if we are aiming up, if we are aiming down. So it tells us our attitude, basically. We also have guidance lines on here. If we're going for an ILS landing, we'll have a localizer line, which is represented by the yellow line, and when we get closer, we'll have a glide slope line, which is a horizontal line. Also, for general navigation, we'll have the same 2 lines that will aid us with general navigation to waypoints. That all works. We have a slip gauge here that tells us our yaw slip. Here we have our HSI. It's not configurable by turning these knobs here, but it does have some function. We've got a range here that tells us our range to our nearest our selected waypoint or point of interest. We've got, I don't think we can select the course here in an A-10 Alpha. If anyone knows any different, please let me know. We do have in other information here, we do have a course line which is controlled through our waypoints, which are set in the mission editor. We have a course deviation line, this long line here. We have, now forgive me, I forget the exact name of it, we do have a pointer here which will point to our next point of interest, which could be a waypoint or an airfield, depending on the navigation that we've got selected. Again, we've got a full video on navigation, so I'm not going to go through all that now. You can see that there. Bunch of buttons down here. None of it is configurable or usable as far as I'm aware. Next, we've got our vertical speed gauge. It tells us if we're climbing or if we're diving in times 1,000 feet per minute. Passive and works. Barometric altimeter. Outside, these numbers are 100s of feet. And here we have the main readout for the barometric altitude in feet. Our QFE we cannot set here. I had a quick look and I can't see any way of changing the QFE that I know. Okay, next we've got our engine instruments. So just let me get my bearings here. This is temperature. We've got 2 engines on this bird, obviously. Left engine, right engine, and I believe this is the core temperature of that engine. Probably at the hottest point, probably at the exhaust and or turbine. Please let me know if you know any better. Next we've got the core engine speed, the RPMs in percent, left engine, right engine. Next we've got, I believe this is the oil pressure, left engine, right engine, probably, yeah, PSI, pounds per square inch. Next we've got the fans. Now these are high bypass ratio turbofans that we have in this aircraft. So essentially what we have is a big fan on the front, you can see it spinning there, and inside is a much smaller core engine. And this front fan is geared down and controlled separately from the main engine core, and hence it has its own fan speeds. A bit like if you went on an airliner, it's kind of an engine you'd have on an airliner. Really good engines, really efficient, powerful as well, but limited in the speed that they can do. And so the fans left and fan right RPMs in percent. Fuel flow to the left engine and to the right engine. Obviously, the further you have your throttle forward, the more fuel, and vice versa. APU, Auxiliary Power Unit. This provides electricity and power to the aircraft to do things like start the main engines. Essentially, that's what an APU is for. As far as I'm aware, it's actually a small jet engine itself. We have a fan speed or a core speed in percent RPMs and a core temperature, EGT, exhaust gas temperature, I believe, of the APU there. Hydraulic systems here, left hydraulic, right hydraulic, times 1000, I think PSI, correct me if I'm wrong. Fuel gauge here. Now here's how we configure the fuel gauge, whatever we want to know. Total internal, main, wings, external. Excuse me. As far as I know, in the A-10A you cannot adjust that. So what this is telling us is the total internal on the left, we've got left wing tanks and we've got right wing tanks. And together they give the combination number in the middle. Okay, apart from the warning lights here, I don't want to go any further back. There's nothing of any relevance further back that I'm aware of. We've got the TV screen here at MFD. In the A-10A in DCS, all it does, as far as I'm aware, is show the Maverick screen. In fact, I might be able to do that now. Let me unpause, put ourselves in air to ground, select the Mavericks. Okay, there we go. That is now showing what our Maverick can see. Now it's black at the moment because it's just looking at the sky. If I were to aim my bore sight, which is that circle there, down to the ground, we would see a picture of the ground. And that is what the active selective Maverick is looking at. Again, don't want to go any further into that because we've got weapons tutorials for all this stuff. Okay, so the only thing I haven't covered, I want to cover in more detail, is the weapons ordnance panel. So we've got these kind of buttons here, which represent the stations. We can have a look at our stations. You can see what we've got there. Sidewinders, cluster bomb, Mark 20, 3 times Mavericks, 3 times Mark 82, and another cluster bomb, and then reversed onto the other side. So these are representations of those stations. Now, first thing to point out, if you're the kind of guy that likes to read a manual, the manual does not marry up with what we've got here. There are discrepancies. So we have to kind of just use a bit of experimentation to find out what everything means. What we can say is that if it's got an E, a yellow E in it, that station is empty. Station 6, which is the center station, which would normally have, what, fuel tank or whatever, that is currently empty. The next thing is to see what we've got selected is we've got these green markers here. Now, one thing to point out is, for instance, if we take pylon 9, we've currently got selected we've got our Maverick selected. If we've got just one R shown here, then that is a single store on that rack. If we've got 2 Rs, then there are multiple stores on that rack, and there are multiple stores at the moment with these Mavericks. Now let me select a Rockeye. I'm changing between these with the weapon select button. Again, I'm not going to go in any further into that because it's all in our weapons tutorial. We've now got 4 Rockeyes selected. These are our 4 stations. Him, 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 and him. They are single weapon stations. They should be showing a single R, not 2 Rs. It's obviously bugged. Something's not working there at the moment. So just be aware of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the weapon select button, and you can see I'm cycling through the different weapons, and these will marry up with what we've got here on the HUD under the weapons information. Again, all covered in a different tutorial. Okay, so that's weapon selection. Next we've got gun. Here are the amount of rounds we've got in our gun, and let's go and fire our gun if I can remember how to. Go like that, go like that. Stop. And you can see we've now got 973 rounds. That's that. We've got gun rate, high, low switch. As far as I'm aware, in the A-10A, that's not configurable. Next, we've got that's configurable. The release mode of the weapon that you've got selected. So why don't we select something a bit more useful? Let's select our Mark 82s. Come on, work. There are Mark 82s we've got selected. 6 of them on 2 stores. We've got the release mode here. We can release them in singles, pairs, ripple mode pairs. How do I explain ripple mode? So ripple mode pairs means you essentially keep your finger on the button and it will keep dropping them in pairs until you're all out of stores. Ripple mode single, the same but with singles. And we can configure this with, I believe it's left, shift and space. So let me try that. Yeah, so I press left, shift, and space. I can go single, pairs, ripple pairs, and back to single. That's that. Next, we've got the ripple quantity, which we've got here. So in our ripple that we're talking about, if we want to drop all 6 in one button press, essentially a button hold, then how many bombs do we want to drop in that ripple? We've got 1 selected at the moment. I believe it's left, control, and space to change that. So we can change it like so. I want to drop all 6 in the 1 ripple. Okay, next we've got the ripple interval millisecond times 10. So between these ripples, so if I've got a ripple of 6 selected like this, and I've got ripple single here selected, and I hold my finger on the ripple, you know, the bomb drop that drops the bomb, it will go bang, 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 drop all those bombs in sequence. This determines the time in times 10 in milliseconds between each bomb drop, and we can change that with the V key and the left shift and V, I believe it is. Let me just try that. So V up and left shift and V down. Okay. Right, so that is all the things that I would consider of relevance covered in this video. Now, you'll notice I've missed some things out, like the UF radio and stuff like that. That's because I've considered them irrelevant. They're non-functioning, they are non-working, they're just eye candy as far as I'm aware. Forgive me if I've missed anything out. I'm not an A-10A driver, so I'm just doing this by a quick scan of the manual. But I think that is everything of relevance. Right, so I hope that helps. Go and do some bombing and stuff in your A-10, and I'll see you later.